I want to before we start, I want to remind us of one of the basic methods of the Baal Shem Tov that he recommends. It is very, very important. It's so basic. It's one of the most important recommendations that he has. And it has to be always reminded until you become, I would say, a consistent user of it. It needs reminding all the time. There's the following. The Baal Shem Tov said very, very logically that the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, who formulated the words which we say in Davening as the correct words, he's talking mainly about Shmona Esrei. Obviously, they didn't formulate the words in Tehillim that we say. That was formulated by David HaMelech and all the other authors who contributed to the Tehillim. But the brachos that we have, Tehillim is not brachos. All the davening, the brachos that we have in davening, some short brachos, some very long ones, is all formulated by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, Gedolei Hador, Nevi'im, and Tanoim. They all were privileged to have Ruach HaKodesh, and the words that they organized for us have in them tremendous amount of background which they had when they formulated those words. They knew that these words, when they are spoken by us, they will go up to Shemayim, they will accomplish what they have to accomplish. Now, l'chadchila, we should have those kavanas that they put into the words. But we cannot have those kavanas. We're not able. We're not on their level. No matter how hard we try, we cannot be on the level of Nevi'im, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah Baruch Kodesh. So what do we do as a substitute for that? So this is recommended by the Baal Shem Tov. It's also brought in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim by Rabbi Chaim Voloshin, who was the Talmud of the Gra. And it's also brought down in the Ben Ish Chai. Rabbi Yosef Chaim mi Baghdad. So we have a Chasidi, we have a Litai, and we have a Svardi. They all come together. All three recommend this as a method of davening, something that should be accepted by everyone. It doesn't need to be a person who's a big Talmud Chacham or a big tzaddik. Everyone can do this, but it takes practice. You have to get used to it. And what they're talking about? They're talking about the following. Since we cannot have any kavanas that will come close to them, so some hold, we can't come close, but let's do the kavanas that we can. Let's do what we know. So they hold, the Baal Shem Tov, the Chaim Voloshin, and the Ben Ish Chai says, why put so much effort into it? You'll never get to what they're really supposed to accomplish, these words. So what are you supposed to do? You're going to do the following. A very simple thing to do, you just have to become accustomed to doing it. Think in your mind, these letters, the form and the letters themselves. How does the letter appear? You know what the letter looks like. Think of an aleph. Think of an aleph. You're saying the word atah, Baruch atah. You think of the aleph, expand it a little bit. Think of the taf, expand it a little bit. Think of the hey, atah. And say to yourself, all the words that I say, all the letters that I say, I am bringing myself into the letter. I am joining the letter, I'm becoming part of the letter. as the Baal Shem Tov used the expression from Parshas Noach, Bo el HaTeva, come into the Word. Think of yourself. When you start davening, when you're saying Shema Yisrael, think of yourself going into the Shin, into the Mem, into the Ayin. You're jumping onto the wagon and going along with the ride. Think of yourself of that. When you say Yisrael, into the Yud, Sin, Reish, Aleph, Lamed, I'm going into the letter. My whole self is transporting itself from where I am into the letter. Go into the Word. Make yourself become part of the letter and therefore part of the Word. And then when you do that, you are going up with the letter to Shemayim, to the spiritual world, and the letter has already contained in it all the energies that it needs. All you have to do is activate it. If you activate it by going into it and saying it, then it will accomplish everything that has to be accomplished. Without any great efforts of all kinds of kavanas, Kabbalistic kavanas, you don't need all the Kabbalistic kavanas. Just simply do that. Say, I am mevatel myself to the letter, to the words. I'm joining, I'm going into it. If you do that, you have accomplished a great thing. Now, that takes time. Every letter, every word takes time. You cannot finish Shmona Esrei in 4 or 5 minutes, as most people do, if you're doing that. It would take you 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, to do the first bracha of Shemona Esrei alone. So the Ben Ish Chai actually, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Baghdad, he says, if you can do it, try to do it for the first 3 brachos. Magen Avraham, and Mechai Yamesim, and Akel HaKadosh. Do it for the first 3. But at the very minimum, do it at least for the first bracha. If you do it for the first bracha alone, you have done a great thing. The first thing is what starts it off. That is the father of all the brachas, and you have accomplished a lot. In time, it becomes easier, and then you can maybe add another bracha. Start off with one and increase. Now, the way you start off the Shemona Esrei will have a tremendous influence on the entire Shemona Esrei. I was just davening in shul the other day, and it seemed that my concentration wasn't so good at the time, and I was conscious of somebody else standing in front of me. He finished Shemona Esrei before I even got up to the second bracha. He finished. I didn't even get up to the second bracha, and I wasn't davening very slow.
That's the problem. If you're davening with only 10 men, and you're not with them, and you're in the first and second word, and they finish the Shemona Esrei already.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. First of all, it could be that you're the only one who's really davening. The whole menu could be just for you. You're the only one who's really davening. That's number one. Number two, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're also davening. So all you have to do to be Yotzei Tefillah B'Tzibur is to start together. If you start the Shemona Esrei together, that's Tefillah B'Tzibur.
What about when you get the Kedusha then?
Forget about the Kedusha. You shouldn't even hear it. You shouldn't even hear the Kedusha. If you're concentrating properly, if you're really focused, you should be so into your davening, you shouldn't even hear the Kedusha. And if you do hear it, so for a moment you stop, and you listen to the words, and you have kavanah to be yotze with those words, and then after you finish the Kedusha, you go on with your Shemona Esrei. That's all. Very simple. You can't stop in the middle of davening and say the Kedusha when you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei. You can't do that. The maximum you could do is stop saying the words, listen to their Kedusha, have kavanah to be yotze with that, as if you're saying it, and then when they finish, you go on with your davening. The point is this. You should feel secure about it, that you are davening. You have come to shul to daven. And you want to make sure you do that. Even if you're doing it at home, it doesn't make a difference. But you want to make sure you're davening. It's very unfortunate that many people in shul, they go through the motions, but they're not davening. I don't know what they're doing.
They're shuckling.
I'll tell you another story that just happened to me last week. I couldn't believe it. I walked into a religious store where they were selling food. I don't want to say what kind of food, because I don't want to give it away, but people might know who it is. They're selling food. He was the only person in the store was myself and the seller. He was standing Shmona Esrei when I walked in. And he was davening Shmona Esrei from his phone. Phone. He saw me walk in, he put his phone down, in the middle of Shmona Esrei, and he's preparing the stuff to put into the bag to give me. And then I realized that he was in the middle of Shmona Esrei. I said, "What?" I didn't. Don't answer me. I said to him, "You're in the middle of Shmona Esrei." So he said to me, "Yes, middle of Shmona Esrei." I said, I'll wait. Finish the Shmona Esrei." Can you imagine that? He's done middle of Shmona Esrei. He puts his phone down and he wants to serve me in the middle of Shmona Esrei, and his mouth is still going. What is that? What is that? I don't know what it is. Is there any greater disgrace to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do such a thing? And he's a religious fellow. He didn't want to miss. He didn't want to miss mincha. So I'll give him the credit. He didn't want to miss. Well, it was on him. He didn't want to miss mincha. So he was davening in the store. He didn't have. I said to him, tomorrow.
Listen, our father Abraham stopped talking to Hashem to serve two Arabs that came to his tent, right?
It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. So I said to him, tomorrow you have to daven mincha gedola. You daven at 1:30. You don't daven. I walked into the store. It was about 7:15, right before Shkia. So he wanted to make sure he made mincha. So we melamed schus on him that he wanted to daven mincha, but that's not. He excused himself afterwards. He says, that's not a way you talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're serving somebody in the middle of Shmona Esrei. Unfortunately, as I said, when we started the shiurim, I've been davening. My father took me to shul. I remember when I was 2 years old. I started to go to shul when I was 2 years old. My father, I didn't remember, he told me when I was 2 years old, he started to take me to shul on Shabbos. 2 years old. So I've been in shul a long time, many years. And I came to Eretz Yisrael, and I thought I knew a little bit about Judaism. So I've been around, I didn't start from new. And then, when I got older, I had a white beard already. I picked up the Sefer of the Baal Shem Tov, and we did a section on Tefillah. And I started to look at it, and I said, we're going to Shalom. I haven't been davening all my life. I've been going through the motions like everybody else. I thought I was davening. I didn't know what it really means until I started to learn and see what tefillah is all about. But I just told you this morning, I have no conception. But the words, putting yourself into the words, no idea whatsoever. Never. I figured, you daven with kavanah, you concentrate on the meaning, and that's it. It's a different world altogether. This is what I call a mitzvah yesayma. It's an orphaned mitzvah. No one has taken care of this mitzvah. It has been sort of put aside as, the most important thing is to be nice, do chesed, and do mitzvahs, and learn Torah. But davening is, you go through the motions, and that's it. It's one of the three pillars that hold up the world: the Torah, the avodah, and the chasadim. Avodah is avodah of tefillah. It's not something that's just, you go through the motions. It's a very, very serious part of holding up the world. Okay. So that was just a review to get us, remind us, Bo El HaTeva. Put yourself into the words. It is something you have to practice to do it all the time. Now coming up Yom Norayin, it has even double importance on Yom Norayin. You don't want to stand in Shul on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur and not daven, just go through the motions. So at least for the first bracha of Shemona Esrei, do what we just said today. Put yourself into the words, into the letters. Imagine yourself as the letter is expanded, and you're going right into the letter, and you're going up with the letter to Shemayim. Okay. Last time we spoke about the time of davening. And on the pages that you have in front of you, you have the Ois Lamed Tes. It says there that the best time to daven, he's talking about Shachris, the best time to daven is with the nets, with the sikhi. It's the best time. It's also important in Shulchan Aruch. The best time of the day. And he says the difference between a person who davens before the nets and after the nets is like day and night. Mizrach l'mayrov. Why? Because after the sun comes up, there is malachim, which are released into the world, and they are not so pleasant. They have all kinds of unpleasant things to do, these malachim. And they aren't given permission to come out and operate until after the sun comes up, after Netz HaChama. If you can get to them before the Netz HaChama, you can be mevatel them and not allow them to be so ferocious, to be so damaging. But once they have already come out into the field, it's very difficult to put them down with the davening. So therefore, there's a difference between day and night. As you knew that with any disease, if you do something to prevent the disease from coming in the first case, it's much more profitable and smarter to do that than to get the disease and then try to cure it afterwards. Why should you want to do it? That's the whole point of the vaccine. You try to ward it off to begin with, and it doesn't take hold. Doesn't take hold to begin with. So when it comes, it becomes very mild or nothing at all. Once you're already afflicted by it, to get rid of it is much more difficult. The Gemara says, "La'olam yispal adam ad shelo yechle, b'yamasha achrei sheyechle." It's better for a person to be b'spal, they should stay healthy, better than being b'spal for refuah shlema after you get sick. Because then they're going to say to you, you want a refuah shlema? Well, what zchuyot do you have to earn it? I said, Min Hashemayim, that you deserve to have this machla for your kapara, and you want to take it off yourself, so you have to show that you're deserving to remove it. You're deserving to have pardoning. You have to show what you deserve. But if you ask for it before you get sick, then it's much easier, because they haven't punished you yet. They haven't decided to punish you yet. So therefore, the same thing applies to the davening also. If you daven with a seeking, that means most of the davening is beforehand, and then with Shemona Esrei, you are starting already the nets at Shemona Esrei. You have a great power to weaken the din in the world. A great power, and there's so much din in the world today. You're doing a chesed not only for yourself, you're doing a chesed for Am Yisrael. The entire world is in turmoil, tremendous turmoil and frustration all over the world. If we daven before the nets, we are weakening the dinim in the world, weakening the process of persecution, of all of the negativity in the world. You accomplish that to a much greater degree if you daven with the nets, with seeking. It means to get up earlier, you have to go to sleep earlier, but it's worth it. Very, very much worth it. Okay, we're up to Os Mem on the sheet that you have in front of you. Os Mem. B'Shem Rabbeinu Abal Shem Tov, Nishmaso B'Ginzei Meromet. Ta'am Lama Asu Lahagdim Tfiloso L'Tfilas Tzibur. Why should you not go ahead? Why can't you daven, if you were ready to daven earlier, He says you shouldn't do that. Daven together, everyone together. Don't be smarter and say, well, I'm faster than them. I started before them. Why should I wait for them? Shehu kodem etzon v'haskomas ha'ivorim. If you daven by yourself beforehand, it's not as powerful and effective. Now, to understand what that means, let's take a look at the bottom, on the notes on the bottom. It's not on this side, it's on the next side, next page. Take a look at the next page. No, it does, excuse me, it starts on the last line. The last line of this page, on page 131, if you look down at the very bottom, you have 131, you see 131? Look at the last line on the page on the left side, there's a small Chav Gimel. You see that small Chav Gimel? Right. So it starts there and it continues to the next page. For Kasav B'Sefer, or HaChochma, Parshas below, Slov, is illustrated. Turn to the next page. Now look at this. This is a beautiful piece. V'zeh inyan shemaiti miharav habal Shem Tov. This mostly begins in the middle. She'ir lo be'ez zman she'omed u'mispadal im chaverim shelo tefillah b'tzibur. Here, Baal Shem Tov was davening with his chasidim. He doesn't call them chasidim; he calls them chaverim. That's very humble. He calls his talmidim, he calls them chaverim. But they were always his chasidim. But they were davening together to the tzibur. V'hine hachavraya lo ha'erichu kamoso. The chasidim didn't daven a long Shmona Esrei like he did. He davened a very long Shmona Esrei because Baal Shem Tov with all his kavanos. V'simu tfilasam. So they finished davening. Harbe mikodem, way before him. V'imtinu alav zman rav, and they're waiting for him, for the Rebbe to finish. All respect for waiting for the Rebbe to finish. Ukishenis arech lahem hazman lahamtin. It was getting already unbearable. How much can you wait? How much are they waiting and waiting for the Rebbe to finish Ma'aseh, and he's not finishing. So what do they do? Pono kol echad mehem ledarko. So everyone decided to take care of what they want to take care of. He could stand there for another half hour, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. How do I know how long the Rebbe is going to daven? I can't give up so much time. So everybody started to take care of his own private inyanim. Litzdarchus shalehem. Someone out, someone in. They were all taking care of their private inyanim. Achar zman chosru v'nizkaptzu lebeis hatfilah. So about it, when they'd say an hour later, they all came back and they got together again in the shul. V'imtinu ashesimu tfilaso. And they had to continue waiting till he finally finished the davening. Then he finished the davening, he turns to them and he says to them, Amar lahem, achar kach habal Shem Tov. Hine bezeh garamtem pirud godol. You caused a tremendous separation. B'masha halachtem l'darkechem. How did he know that they went out? He was so engrossed in his davening. And he said when they came back and they finished Mount Esrei, he turned to them and he says, "Oh, what you did a terrible thing. You caused a tremendous damage. You caused a breakup of the whole tzibur." How did he know about it? This is what happened. He nachlem osi levadi. You left me alone, and he gave them a mashal. Him shalahem mashal. Ki yadua teva ha'oifos. The nature of birds are that in the wintertime they migrate to warmer areas, right? Lisa b'choref el artzos achamos. They go to warmer climates in the summer, in the wintertime, to get to warmer climates. V'nei pamachas ro'u yoshvei hamedinos haheim b'tocha ofos of echad yafeh. They saw that these birds, tremendous flocks of birds, thousands of birds, they saw there was one bird who was exceptionally beautiful. Exceptionally beautiful. ומהודר מכל הגוונים שבעולם, and it was so colorful and so royal and so majestic, שלא ראו כמוהו בעולם. They never saw a bird like that in their life, a very outstanding, exceptional bird in this flock. הוא יושב על עץ גבוה, when he always takes the top branch in the highest tree.
Rabbi, excuse me, I'm too warm, so I'm going to leave.
Well, isn't this cold enough for you? Isn't it?
It's not working.
It's
So I'll
low.
watch it on the,
Right. Hu yoshev al eitz gavoa. This bird, he's on the top, perches himself on the top branch of the highest tree. She'iyaf she'la'alot alav l'tofsa. And you can't climb it up. It's so high you can't climb up to grab the bird. K'sheshama hamelech mizeh ha'of. The king heard about this bird, and the king wants this bird. Tzivo, so what did he say? L'kabetz harbe anashim. He says, get together a big group of people. Everyone will stand on everybody else's shoulders. And you'll make yourself a ladder. Until the top person can finally grab the bird. Okay, so the king wants the bird, they're going to do it. It was very heavy. The guys on the bottom holding up them was very heavy. So they said, I can't stand it. So they started to move away, and the whole thing collapsed. The whole thing collapsed. And they got wounded and so on and so forth. This was the mashal that the Baal Shem Tov gave them. And he said to them, and what happened? They didn't get the bird. They didn't get what they wanted to. He says, the point that the king wanted was that they should all be united together. And in their unison, they will be able to accomplish tremendous amount of heights. From here we learn we have to also. What is the Baal Shem Tov saying to the Talmidim? He said, we were together, and I was davening along Shmona Esrei, and you were waiting for me, but we were all together. But once you went out, everybody started to take care of his own personal inyanim, and you had a hesach hadas, the entire chabura, the whole Tefillah B'tzibur, became disrupted. And I can't possibly do what I wanted to do without the koch of the tzibur. So he said, that's what's part of it. You know, the Arizal says when you go into shul in the morning, it's in Smitten, a lot of the Sidurim, you go into shul in the morning, you have to say, Ani mekabel al atzmi, mitzvahs aseh v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. When you go into shul in the morning, and you sit down to daven, you have to say, I'm mekabel on myself v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, to have love for every Jew, real of every Jew, and then our tefillos are all united. And they have a tremendous koach. There's tremendous power in unity of the masses, when they all are in one thing together. Ba'achdus, you accomplish a tremendous amount. Shetzorach sheyeh beinayim his kashrus chazak. Shekulam devukin bi'ava v'chiba v'lo yispardu ze mizeh. V'chein amar HaBaal Shem Tov hinei tov haya k'sheyisem v'chubar imi b'tfilah. It was wonderful when you were here and you were waiting for me to finish my Esrei and you didn't leave. Avo k'shazavtem osi levadi, when you left me alone, v'kol echad pona l'darko, hinei nofal hakol. The entire structure collapsed. Umashu ratziti lahasig porach gam kein mimeni. What I was trying to accomplish, I couldn't do it anymore because I didn't have the koach of the tzibur. Ubir hadav yosef kimi achar shebetorah bar Hashem yisbarach kol ha'olamos. V'yakol b'shu Yisrael. He created the entire creation, the universe, for the Jews, for the Jewish people. V'al kein kol echad miYisrael yesh lo shorash bi'os achad mi'os HaTorah. Did you know that? Every single Jew is attached in the shorash of his neshama to one of the letters in the Torah. U'kamo shekol ha'olamos shenivru al yedei HaTorah. All of the worlds, all the whole universes that are created with the Torah, omdim zeh l'mayla mizeh. They all are on a level of hierarchy. The worlds are not just flat, equal. There is a level, and a higher level, and a higher level. That's the way everything works. It's all one big binyan. Mal mizeh. Omdim zeh l'mayla mizeh lefi yishtalshus HaTorah b'pardet kein hu b'Yisrael. The same thing applies to Klal Yisrael. Sheyesh lehem gam kein shorish b'osis HaTorah. Tzrichen lehem tamid liskasha zeh b'zeh. They have to be always together. V'gam liskasha zeh l'mayla mizeh. V'yakol bi'ahavo rabba. Oh, is that important? Wow. Shekamo she'haTorah hi achas kein yu mikusharim ka. The Torah, every letter in the Torah is puzzle. Correct? If you have one letter missing from the Torah, one letter missing, or it's written incorrectly, the whole Sefer Torah is puzzle. Every Jew has a chelik in the Torah. If you have one Jew's missing, or he's not there, or whatever it is, so then there's a lacking in the entire wholeness, the wholesomeness of the Torah, because we're all connected to a letter of the Torah. Every Jew. And therefore, when you come into shul in the morning, you want to make sure at the time of davening that we're all together. So you say, I'm a kabbalah on myself to love every Jew like I love myself. Then there's a joining, that joins everyone together. So you can accomplish tremendous amounts. It's so important to do that. But you didn't have patience. You all went out to take care of your personal things. Obviously, you didn't have enough ava and strength at the time. You certainly didn't have ava for the person who was above you. Maybe he meant to say himself. Therefore, the entire structure became a kulkal. It's beautiful. Islam is beautiful. It's so important. Everyone should be davening together, and the question is that you asked before about if you daven a long Shemona Esrei, you're going to miss Kedusha. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The main thing is you have the Ava for every Jew in the shul, every Jew in the world, and you start to davening, and then you lose it all. You're not interested in anything else. You're only into your Shemona Esrei, and you're concentrating, putting in the neshama into every letter, and then you go up with the letters to Shemayim. Without any kavanah. You don't have to have even the understanding of the words. You do not have to have the understanding of the words. You do have to have the understanding that you're standing in front of God. Da lifnei mi ata omeid. You must be aware that you are standing in front of God. Now this fellow in the store that I went into, in the middle of Shemona Esrei, he puts down his phone and he's tending to me, filling up a bag with all kinds of foods that I want to buy. He was not aware that he's standing in front of God. He was not aware at that moment. If you stand in front of God, you don't do that. You don't do that. Very, very important. You stand, you have to have that basic awareness. I told you that, maybe I didn't tell you, I have to tell you this. It's connected to the Brisker Rav. who wasn't at all in favor of Hasidus, but doesn't matter. When it comes to the truth, they all got to the same conclusions. He said there's two kavanas, major kavanas, basic kavanas a person has to have in davening. One basic kavana is he has to concentrate on what he's doing. The second kavana is he has to know that he's standing in front of God. He has to realize that he's consciously standing in front of God. So if you don't not understand the words, are you davening? If you're standing in front of God, you're still davening. You're aware that you're davening, you're standing in front of God. I was once accompanying Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach here in Shaarei Chesed on his way home. And I asked him a question regarding davening. So he said to me, I have a mother. She must have been in the 90s, 80s, she's a real old woman already. And he said to me, I guarantee you, she doesn't understand a word that she's davening. She speaks only Yiddish, does not understand any Hebrew. But her tears are sapped into the siddur. And she's talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She's Mekayim Dalef Nemiyah Tolmei. She knows she's standing in front of God. Even though she doesn't understand the words. Doesn't matter. And in the famous story about the Baal Shem Tov, where a person was tooting his shofar or tooting his horn, he didn't know how to daven at all. He went into the forest. Baal Shem Tov said, his tefillah went up. Fantastic. What did he accomplish B'Shamayim? More than you did with all your tefillahs. Because he knew he's standing in front of God, and that's all he could do to communicate. He didn't know anything more. Never learned how to read, nothing. But he wanted to talk to God. That's the most important thing, is you have to know that you're standing in front of God. You don't realize that, your tefillah is not worth anything. It's not worth anything. You have to realize you're walking into shul, you're walking into God's living room. It's not your living room. You walk into the living room, your own living room, you say, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. What's doing? You don't do that in God's living room. You only talk to God in His living room. You don't talk to all your friends in His living room. Sichas chulin in the Beis HaKnesses is usher. The only thing you can talk to in the Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaMidrash, is about God. That's it. The Ramah says you're not even allowed to kiss your child. You have a little baby, you take him to shul. You want to take him to shul for chinuch, fine, little child. No kissing. Your affections, only to Hashem. You're in God's living room, not in your own. People don't realize that. You have to stand at the door, you have to realize, wow, wait, 1 minute. I'm not going to my house. I'm going into God's domain. It's a different domain altogether. I stop at the door. I have to get my bearings. I'm walking into God's living room. His chotzer. I have to be on guard here. I have to be completely different decorum. Different decorum altogether. Then you're on a good start. And then you can come. And then you say, okay, I sit down. I will cover up myself via Naftali kamocha. I love every Jew like I love myself, and all our tefillahs therefore will be combined, and they go up. So then you're in good shape. Okay. This Indian of waiting for other people, if you have a shliach tzibur who's a little bit lengthy, you have to have patience. Coming up now, Rosh Hashanah, I was told once, one of the Rabbi in Meir Shorim, I forget which Rebbe it was, so he blows shofar on Rosh Hashanah, and he has his svarim open with all the kavanos. You know how long it takes the blowing of shofar in his shul? 1.5 hours. Tchiyah shofar takes 1.5 hours. While he's blowing shofar, he's learning in the svarim, and he stops in between, and he's going over it and over and over it. It's coming. What about everybody else in the shul? What are they doing? Do they go out, take care of their personal inyanim? No. Everyone's sitting there with patience, with tolerance in the shul until the Rebbe finishes. You don't break up the group. We don't break up the group. We have patience, we have tolerance. You sit down, you learn, but you're waiting. The Rebbe is blowing shofar. It's like, he's the Baal Tefillah now. He's the Shliach Tzibur. You have to wait till the Shliach Tzibur finishes. We're all in it together. And when we're in it together, then there's achdus and ahava, then you accomplish great things. So even though it's taking an hour and a half, but they have patience, they wait, they sit down, they can learn meanwhile, they go with the kavanas. He's doing his thing, and we're supporting him, we're backing him, we're with him. We don't go out and come back like these Talmidim went out when the Shem Tov was davening. You went out, the whole structure collapsed. What I wanted to accomplish in my tefillah, you couldn't do it anymore. Only with the koach of the tefillah biyachad. Okay. All right, we're on the next page now. Now we're going to get to something which is very, very heavy. Very, very heavy, and most people would think this is too extreme. But I want to give you a little hagdam. We have to realize that a tefillah that we have was instituted b'mkol karbanos, right? The tefillah are in place of the karbanos. We have shachris, we have mincha, connected the korban tamid naboker, v'gam ben harbayim, right? So what happens when a korban is brought on the mizbeach? What kind of korban was it? It was a korban olah. The olah was brought twice a day for the tzibur, once in the morning and once in the late afternoon. What happens to the korban? It's shechted, right? And it's put on the mizbeach, and it's burnt, and it goes up to Shemayim, except for the skin. The skin they didn't. The skin they gave it to the Kohen. But everything went up. Nothing was saved. Now I tell you that you are b'mkom the korban. What we're doing is b'mkom the korban. What does that mean? That means, essentially, I have to think of myself as the korban olah. I'm going up to Shemayim. Am I coming back? The olah didn't come back. The korban olah didn't come back. This is very, very difficult for a lot of people to accept. What are you talking about? Come on, you dive in 5 minutes and go on with life. That's not what it's about at all. Look at the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Look at the words of the Baal Shem Tov on top of the page, 132, Mem Aleph. Look at the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Yachshov koidim hatfila, shuhu muchan lomus b'yoysa hatfila, machmas godel hakavana. Let me tell you something. I know of two cases. One case was Ben Zoma in the Gemara, another case of an interview that I heard of a woman who had clinical death. I don't even know if she was Jewish or not. But she said, when she went up there, they said to her, "What are you doing here?" Whoever was speaking to her said to her, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Well, I'm here. I'm not in control. I'm here." Maybe she was on the operating table and she died. I don't know. I don't remember what happened. So they said to her, "Go back down. You're not supposed to be here." But she said, "I don't want to go back down." Yeah, I don't want to go back down. What she saw up there was so overwhelming, she wanted to stay. The world, the life back down over here, didn't compare. You can't even compare. No comparison whatsoever. It's a different world. The Gemara says, Arba nichnasu lepardes. There were 4 people who did what we call deep meditation. And their meditation, they did what all the Nevi'im did. They went into the Olamis Holyonim in their meditation. They didn't go any place. They didn't go to any orchard, no paradise, nothing. They went into a room, maybe, wherever, and they all together decided they're going to go meditate and go into the Oilimus Halyonim, the deepest in the mind. Only one person came out, Shalem, Rabbi Akiva. We had Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, and Acher, Elisha ben Avuya. Elisha ben Avuya, Acher, he became a kaifer. Ben Azai died, and Ben Zoma, he was such a tzaddik, he didn't want to come back. He didn't want to come back. He was so overwhelmed with what he saw, he didn't want to come back. And they let him stay. This woman, they didn't let us stay. They didn't let us stay. And I guarantee you, every one of us here, if we went up there, we wouldn't want to come back either. Wouldn't want. We're not even asked when we're thrown down here. As it says in Pirkei Avos, Bal kocha atochai. You're not asked if you want to come back down. They send you down. You have no choice. Our neshamas are spiritual entities. They would rather be in a natural habitat of a spiritual world. They don't want to come into a Gashmi world. This is an antithesis. It's not pleasant for the neshama to be here. It's here against its will. Now, when you put yourself into a mental state of real concentration and focusing on the spiritual world and connecting to God, you can get to the point, really, where you don't want to come back out of Shemona Esrei. You want to stay there. And you know, one of the reasons why when we do come back after Shemona Esrei, and we have what we call Nefilas Apayim. What's Nefilas Apayim? What we call Tachnun. What do we do when we have Tachnun? Fall on our face. But you know what they used to do? They used to fall on their face, on the floor. Totally prostrating themselves. Totally. What we do is a game. It's a game. Why do they do that? Why? Because they just came from a world that is so overwhelming, it's so beautiful, it's so encompassing. Come back to this, I want to give it all up. I'm throwing in the towel, as they say. I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm falling on my face. I want to go back to you. That's what Nefilas Apayim is. Why is it called Nefilas Apayim? You're falling on your face because you want to give it all up. When Moshe and Aaron had all this service in the Midbar for the Erev Rav, how many times did they fall on their face? What? I can't take it. I'd rather be with you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're not listening to me. They don't listen to you. I'm Kshay Oref. I give it up. I give it up. I want to be with you. That's all. I don't want any more of it. When you're davening Shemona Esrei, if you're really davening what you're supposed to, and you're going to concentrate, and you're trying to connect to God, connecting to God, it's so inspiring, it's so encompassing, that you should think before davening, you know, if I'm successful, I'm going to stay there. I don't want to come back. I really enjoy it there. I don't want to come back. And with a person's mind, you can actually get to that point. Let me tell you something, an amazing thing. With your mind, what you can do with your mind. When I was a young man, I was in my 20s, there's a professor giving us a lecture, professor of sociology or psychology, I don't remember what it was. And he says, you want to get a PhD? I'll give you a PhD. How do you get a PhD? Like that, I'll give you a PhD. I'll give you an example. You explain to me what I said, and I'll give you a PhD. What was the PhD? He says the following. He says, if you hypnotize somebody and you tell him that you're going to burn him with a hot iron, and he's into the hypnosis, and you're giving him the suggestion, you're going to burn him with a hot iron. And then you take a simple pen or pencil and you touch his arm. That arm is going to form a blister as if it was a real burn. And he believes you. And you're telling him, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to burn you with a hot iron. And then you go ahead and you burn him. And he thinks that you are burning him with a hot iron. And it's going to form a blister, a burn. And he says, if you take a chemical analysis of the water inside the blister, it will be precisely the same as if it was a real burn. And all you did was take a cold, simple pen or pencil and touch him, and it will form a blister with the same chemical composition as if it was actually a burn. If you can explain that, I'll give you a PhD. That's it. What does he say? In other words, he's saying your reality, not only your subjective reality, an objective reality which can be analyzed by a scientific analysis, is determined by your kavanah. By your kavanah, you determine the reality. You hear with that? You're making a actual, true, objective fact take place because of your kavanah. And therefore, in your kavanah, you say, I'm going to do everything I can to try to connect to Hashem. He's so far from me, Hashem. I can't even imagine I can't even describe Hashem. How can I connect? But you know there's something spiritual, there's something there, something that's bigger than everything in the world, that's making everything go around, it's making everything tick. I want to connect to that. And if I'm successful, I want to stay there. That's what the Shem Tov says. You should be thinking that if I'm successful, I want to stay. And I don't want to come back. Look at the words again. Yachshov kodem atfila. Shu muchan lamus be'oisei atfila machmas godel hakavana. V'yesh mechavnim kol kach ad shepa'amim beteva haye yachal lamus. There are some people who come so well practiced in it that by nature he should have died. He shouldn't have come back. B'shanim, b'shnayim, b'shloshim tevos, showing the fun of his book Shemot. All he said was 2 or 3 words, but he got so much into it, he shouldn't come back. Ukishiyachshov kach, and if he thinks that way, you're a believer. Why do I have to have all these nourishkeit in this world with all kinds of things, but gaiva and all these things? Yeah, that's tefillah. Kiven shebedaito afilu lamus achashnam v'shloshim tevos. Ube'emes hu chesed gadol. Look at the next line. Ze chesed gadol mi Hashem yizborach. She'adam chai achar hatfila. You hear that? It's a tremendous kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you're still alive. Shelefi derech hateva hoya lo lamus. Machmas shemafsid kocho. You're giving up all your strength. Ki nosan kocho b'tfila kol kach mikoach hakavana gedola shu mechaven. Isn't that something? Now let me ask you something. In your entire life, did you ever think of such a thing?
No.
This is the real stuff. Don't forget. We are replacing a korban. The korban goes up, it doesn't come down. Korban goes up, it doesn't come down. Halavai, we should get so close to this, but we should have in our mind at least some kind of a picture of what there is that a person can accomplish in tefillah. You can get to such a level. It's possible. It's possible. Ben Zoma did it. This woman who had a clinical death, she said the same thing. She doesn't want to come back. We can't imagine what it is. Can't imagine what it is. There's nothing, as it says in Pirkei Avos, Shoah Kala, Shel Koirash Ruach, Shel Olam Haba, Yoter Mikol Chayei HaOlam Hazeh. To get just a sniff of what's going on in Haba is greater than the greatest imaginable pleasures that you can imagine in this world. Take it all together. Think of your whole life. Think of your entire life and try to encapsulate it into one pill which will give you the greatest amount of pleasure that you can possibly imagine. Not only yours, all your chaverims, your whole family, put it all together. Your whole city. It says, Kol Rash Ruach, V'Shah Achas, a sniff of Olam HaEmes is a greater pleasure than all of the possible hanoah that there is in Olam Hazeh. And once you taste that, who needs all this? Who needs it all? What do I need it for? That's the real thing. That's the real thing. And then I heard another Christian who also died clinically, and he came back. He was a tremendous accident. His face was all disfigured, terrible accident he had. And he said, I'll tell you one thing. When you're up there, you know in every cell of your body that that's the truth and all this is a fake. You know it. You know it. You don't have to be taught it. You feel it in every cell of your body that that's the truth and all this here is a fake. And we all have a urging, a desire for the truth. We want the real thing. It's possible to get close to that in our davening. It's possible. But you have to really take yourself out of all the narishkeiten. You have to realize, I'm now going into another realm. Another realm. I'm going to forget about this world. I'm going into the level of the oisios, the kedushas of oisios. I'm putting myself into the letters. I'm becoming one with the letters. The letters have so much kedusha, so much power. Hashem is in the letters. That's what I want. I want to reach Him in the letters. You can do that. It takes time. It's practice. But you're not the same person after you finish davening. You're not the same person. You have jumped 1,000 levels. 1,000 levels. And then your whole life is much more productive. It's much happier. Everything is better. You look at the world in a lot different way. Much, much different way. You don't get bothered by all kinds of foolish things. All kinds of foolish things. President Shul said to me the other day, I said, well, you haven't come coming to davening as much as you used to. I asked him. So he says, well, you know, the fan bothers me a little bit. The fan bothers me. I said, come on. The fan bothers me. Wait, that's when you come to shul, but it's bothering you, the fan. That's what's bothering you, the fan. So sit someplace else. Come on, and make it higher, make it lower. Do what you want. The fan's bothering you.
That's why he left.
Now it came back on, the air conditioning. Before it was off. Right. So anyway, Tefillah is supposed to be such an uplifting, elevating, spiritual experience. It's supposed to leave you with something that after you're finished, you know, that's, I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm looking forward to the next one. Okay, Rabbi Sai, until next week.
It sounds